Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fact Friday, Episode 3 on April 11th, 2025. Today, we'll examine the controversy surrounding our employer identification number, an unauthorized incorporation that has affected our community. We'll clarify the timeline of events, explain the current status of our EIN, and address critical concerns affecting all property owners. This presentation includes a small retraction regarding the old EIN's current inactive status, along with necessary clarifications and a constructive proposal to move forward as a community. Here's the known timeline of key events. So before May of 2024, our original EIN was listed in IRS systems. We don't know when that changed. The assignment letter from the 1970s confirms that this was our identity and this was the registration and it was valid. That original assignment letter states that keep the letter because this is your number forever. On May 20th, the new EIN applied for by Kelly Harrell without proof of deactivation of the old EIN. This was prior to the incorporation attempt. On May 28th, an unauthorized corporation was formed without property owners' vote, violating our own CCRs. The corporate documents included individuals who didn't consent to be in place on that formation document and didn't know that they were on a board of a corporation. June of 2024, Charlene and Jerry were elected to the board, unaware of the new EIN or the new incorporation, even though Charlene was elected as treasurer. In December of 2024, the IRS updated their policy about inactive EINs. They stated that after 50 years without any tax filing, they would deactivate, and updates to the public website with guidance about the EINs was put up on the web. Now, I should note that that 50 years of not filing taxes, that's not an indication that anything was done wrong. They just consider it to be inactive because the IRS is looking at it from tax status. They're not looking at it as the fact that many people use that number as proof of identification. March of 2025, Charlene deactivated the unauthorized EIN per IRS guidance from the helpline and from previous research on the IRS public-facing website. In spring of 2025, the Trinity National Bank dissolved their 50-plus year relationship with CBA POA due to the multiple EINs and behavior of board members. And then in April of 2025, a property owner, thank you, Tim O'Brien, called and actually recorded his conversation with the IRS. So this is the first time we've had proof that the IRS now states that that old EIN is inactive. Since I don't expect you to just take my word for it, this is the May 2024 screenshot of the IRS website. This is through archive, the web archive that's administered by the Smithsonian. May 15th of 2024, the IRS states we cannot deactivate EINs. The number is forever. Specifically, it states the IRS cannot cancel your EIN. Once an EIN has been assigned to a business entity, it becomes a permanent federal taxpayer identification number for that entity. Regardless of whether the EIN is ever used to file federal tax returns, the EIN is never reused or reassigned to another business entity. The EIN will still belong to the business entity and can be used at a later date should the need arise. This was the publicly available information from the IRS up until December 24th of 2024. And in October of 2024, same advice from the IRS website that they do not cancel EIN. Now, on December 24th of 2024, this is the first time that the web archive picked up that there had been a change on the website at the IRS. If you no longer need your EIN is now what the web page is titled as, and it says that if you no longer need this, then we can't cancel it, but we can deactivate it. Once we assign an EIN for this entity, it becomes that entity's permanent federal taxpayer ID. However, there was a list of reasons why you might need to deactivate it. They give an address on how to do that. Now, I think that this next statement, file tax returns before we deactivate your EIN, I think that was misinterpreted by some. That's not a threat. That's not, hey, you better file tax returns or else we're going to deactivate your EIN. Instead, it's instructions on what order to do things if you are closing your business and you need to close your EIN. And so that order is first, get good with taxes, file taxes, do all that kind of stuff, and then close your EIN. It wasn't a threat. So our current status is old EIN is now inactive, and that was verified in April of 2025. There is no proof of when that went active, and there is no evidence that it was inactive when the new corporation was filed in May of 2024. In fact, the IRS guidance at that time said that EINs were not inactivated or revoked, and they could not deactivate EINs even with a request. The original documentation, the assignment letter from the 1970s, was used with banks, it was used with lenders. It shows that we had an EIN. So these claims that we never had one and we were never legal are just false. The timing is crucial to understand as we evaluate the actions taken by Kelly and Kelly without proper authorization from the Property Owners Association and specifically the property owners themselves. So we now have a new EIN, but I don't think we should be using it. It was signed to a corporation when that has never been authorized. It has a wrong classification. It lists us as a healthcare and social assistance program, and that classification matches the fraudulent charity representation that they made in the past. Now, it should be noted that some HOAs can actually claim partial social welfare organization. That designation that Cody Hahn had claimed on the fundraising website, but they are usually ones that have little leagues, food banks, self-care clinics. They have employment training, things like that as part of the offerings to not only the property owners within their HOA, but to the broader community. There was also just false information on that SS4, including incorrect name. And you can't tell me that the IRS added the name association. The SS4 said Camp Branch Acres subdivision property owners and no association. The IRS is not going to help you out and name your entity correctly whenever you file that application incorrectly. And the somebody had stated that that was because there wasn't room. Well, this was an online filing, and when I acted like I was going to file for an EIN for another one that had the same number of characters, it took it. So, and that was with IRS approval. I asked for a test case. There was no submission confirmation. Most of us know whenever you file a form online, you get some kind of here is what you have submitted. Thank you for your submission, date, time, confirmation. There was nothing about that. What they're showing on the website right now and what they showed in that Zoom call is just the form that somebody put information into it. We don't have any validation of when that date was. They're using it as proof that they say, hey, we actually did inform the IRS twice that we had an old EIN, and there is no proof of that in this SS4 that they have put on the CBA-COA.net website. It's not signed, it's not dated, it's not stamped, it has incorrect information. It obviously is not what was actually filed. And in fact, it can't be because the prefix for the new EIN shows that that was an online submission, and this form, it doesn't show the submission confirmation. So this form is just whatever somebody wanted to type into it, whenever they typed into it. I do have a Freedom of Information Act request out to the IRS to try to obtain what was actually submitted on the application for that new EIN. This new EIN is also attached tax returns that list that as the EIN before the EIN was ever created for a corporation that hadn't been created during those years either, and that misclassifies all income as exempt function income, which it's not. Another reason why this new EIN shouldn't be used is because Bill publicly disclosed the number. He verbally, recited it. which is how I had the number to put in my Freedom of Information request. This because the previous records request, the EIN number I got was redacted, which it should be, because it is confidential financial information that should not be just spread around. And you could say, well, that Zoom was just property owners, but we don't know that. That Zoom meeting, the link, the passcode, and the fact that it was banking information was posted on a publicly available unsecured website, and it was also, it could have just been forwarded to anybody. We don't know who was on there. There were two Tims. I think there's only one Tim in our property owner association on the listing. I asked him if he was signed in on two devices. He said, no, that other Tim wasn't him. And of course, the couple looked like they were using, handles or usernames, not actual people's names. So we don't know. And the fact is there are bad actors out there that will do Google searches to try to find new information out there about Zoom calls, especially, with titles like banking information that has passcodes. So this was a very unsecure way to post this information out there and to share this information with basically could have been anybody in the public. Now, why is this important? Because you can take an EIN and you can take formation documents, which are public information. The EIN is not supposed to be public information. You can take those two things and go open accounts, bank accounts, loan accounts, donation recipient accounts. That's why the IRS tells us do not share these numbers. In fact, they specifically state that treat it as you would your Social Security number. Now let's get to the positive part of this presentation. So Tim O'Brien had a really great proposal on Facebook. He said, all this controversy comes down to we got incorporated and everything that comes from that, and that the property owners didn't have a say in it. In fact, the board didn't have a say in it. It was just two people. So he made the proposal, and I think it's pretty fair. Just put the vote out to the property owners. Find out, what does Camp Grand Shakers, the property owners, want to do at this point. And as far as Mike and I are concerned, if the property owners vote to be a corporation, we will stand down. And in fact, we'll use our legal resources that we have, which is beyond a prepaid legal plan. We will use those resources to help fix filings and help get the corporation legal, because right now it is not on a good standing. And if the property owners say, no, they don't want to be a corporation, then this board and the two current board members that tried to incorporate us, they need to stand down too. They need to, respect the will of the property owners. You're there to serve us, not the other way around. So Tim put this out on Facebook. I've heard from a number of people that they're intrigued by this idea. We know that votes can go out there very quickly, because we've had some votes go out quickly recently for things that shouldn't have even been that important. So this approach respects the voice of all property owners while providing a path forward regardless of the outcome. So as far as I can see, this is a win-win solution for the entire community. So let's be clear here. The timing issue, the inactive status of the old EIN came nearly a year after the unauthorized incorporation and new EIN application that occurred around May 2024, May 28th, one business day after the Memorial Day holiday. This timeline proves the actions taken were not justified by an EIN inactive status. And the other thing is it's not really a justification anyways, because an EIN can be assigned to an unincorporated nonprofit association, which is what we were at the time, just as easily as to a corporation. There was no practical reason to change our entire legal organizational structure without property owner approval. The decision to fundamentally change our community's legal structure should have been made collectively by all property owners, not unilaterally by two individuals in the dark, actively hidden from the property owners. By allowing a proper vote now, we can resolve this controversy and move forward with transparency and proper governance that respects all property owners' voices. I encourage the board, put a vote out to the property owners, and let's move past this. Thank you so much for listening to what is probably a very boring topic. and I hope to see you next Friday.